What's up everybody? Welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel. My name's Rex. This is about the Super Avante today. But I'd like to start by letting you know this is not a detailed build video or a guide. If you're looking for one of those, Tony over at Competition X on his YouTube channel has a very good in-depth 4-part build guide for this, and I'd highly recommend it. So what we're going to do in this video is watch me build it, and I'll mention a couple of things that happened to me or something that I noticed. I've built a lot of kits in my lifetime. Sometimes I'll leave the hardware bags where they are, sometimes I'll organize them, but I usually just dump them all into one bin and I'll pick my parts from there. Because on many of the Tamiya builds I've done, the instructions have you going back and forth between the bags, and they don't actually go in order all the time. And before I start building, I always like to go through the manual. Not in super detail, just a big overview. But it's always good to know what's going to come next and what parts you may or may not want to miss. Wait a minute, did I just say miss a part? Why would you want to miss a part in the instructions? Well, in this specific build, there is a part that you want to miss. And so did Greg from RC Driver, so stay tuned and we'll talk about that when it comes. Not sure if you've noticed, but I like to lay out all of the hardware matching onto the instructions on the book before I start building. So I'll take the hardware out of the trays, put it down in the book to match everything up. Then I'll look for all the plastic pieces that I need to trim off their trees, and then start the actual instruction. I always make sure to use an X-Acto knife to cut off the extra flashing or leftover plastic on the pieces that you cut off the tree. Tamiya has you building the rear gearbox first, so when you get to the rear and the front, be sure to pay close attention to the bearing sizes. This is where I made my first mistake, and I had to take the gearboxes apart to change the bearings. However, you'll see it's very easy to do, and I like what Tamiya has done. One of you commented on my last Super Avante video and asked if there's going to be room for cooling the motor since it's so tucked into the chassis. Well, there actually is quite a bit of room. There's a big opening right behind the battery, as well as a fan location on top of the motor, and a shroud that directs air to the motor, almost like a ram air. You have a look here, you can see it. For this build, I've chosen to use an HPI Firebolt 15 turn. It is a brushed motor. I feel like this will be a good happy medium for bashing and racing around a track. For strictly racing, I do have a Tekin 17.5 that I may be putting in this in the future. In case you don't know what that blue tube is on the screen, it's blue thread lock that I'm using for the set screw or grub screw for the pinion gear. Tamiya is very clear and precise in letting you know that they would like you to set the rear turnbuckles to 22mm and the front to 23. Right here I take a few moments to glance at the chassis and look at it in awe. The materials used are very similar, if not the same, as the TA08 and other high-end chassis. I'm really liking this. The next step they tell you to do here is the rear ball diff. So I take it upon myself to go ahead and do the front and rear at the same time. That way I don't have to get my hands greasy twice. I like to clean up all of the metal parts in the ball diffs first with brake clean, which is alcohol based, including the outdrives. And usually you'll see you wipe off quite a bit of brown crud or anti-corrosion oil or whatever it is on that stuff. When building ball diffs and thrust bearings, I like to just dump all the balls into a puddle of grease, and I'll use a pair of pliers to pull them out. Pay close attention here, because all I do is cover this differential with one plate and then a partial half plate that's held on by a total of 4, 6, 8 screws, I believe. So 8 screws at the bottom, and out comes your differential. Easy adjustment. Keep in mind, if you're going to build this, that you need a low profile servo, so this is the one that I went ahead with. And here's where I made a mistake in the front end gearbox. I used the wrong bearing. But if you have a look, there's 2, 4, 6 screws in there, 8 screws total, and I can take apart the top of that front gearbox to replace whatever I want, or to do maintenance on my differential. It was really neat to see how that whole front end clip bolts on and off, or the front bulkhead attaches to the front of this chassis. Why it's cool is because you can see why and how Tamiya designed this chassis and this mold so that it could be utilized in more than just one model. Some of you in the comments section have already mentioned it, but the front arms look incredibly beefy, almost like an 8 scale. It even features captured hinge pins, just like an 8 scale. I'm just going to show you quickly here how easy it is to take the front end off so you can access the differential. Have a look at these suspension balls that go in the turnbuckles. They're actually made of metal, not plastic like their TTO2. Here we can see very clearly the caster blocks, the C-hubs, the uprights, whatever you want to call them. The knuckles, they're all very beefy and designed just like an 8 scale. Alright, so here's where I just cut off some plastic spacers to install onto the hubs that Tamiya has asked us to do. But I took a closer look and realized that these were the bump stops that Greg from RC Driver said to not install if you want full throw steering. Now, I do see that you can install the cap head screw just to limit it a bit, and it's probably good for your drive shafts to do that, but I went ahead and left it all out. And as I near the end of completing my rolling chassis, I wrap things up because the next step is to paint the body and the driver figure. No sense in painting the driver figure and then continuing. I might as well paint the body and the driver figure together and then finish the build completely. So I'll definitely be back with another video discussing in more detail my opinions and how I feel. There's one last thing I want to show you guys. It's got a transponder mount. Thanks for joining me. Hit the like, subscribe, and